And yeah, let's jump right in. So I'm in the X Hours prototyping number 3 demo. And we're gonna go kind of back and forth to try prototyping and to watch kind of the basics of it. So right away, you'll notice for prototyping, there's 3 tabs on the top right? So we have the design tab, which you're already somewhat familiar with, and prototype is right next to it. So the prototype tab is the one that we're going to be focusing on the most today. And it has some basic parameters when you first get started with your screens. So you can choose the device that you're working with. So the type of frame that you've been designing is the device, and it won't necessarily guess for you because you can maybe prototype in any other device shell, but this is what's going to give you the real life kind of model for the users. And you can even pick a color in the dropdown. So let's just say, you have those parameters set up. The background doesn't necessarily matter unless you want to go like for some branding and make it look and feel kind of like what the brand looks like when the user's interacting. And then the starting frame is the beginning of the prototype. So this would have like realistic names and, home screen. I have a few here, but that's where the prototype would start. And that's basically all you need to know for getting set up. The first thing when you're creating your interactions is going to be slightly easy. When you're in the prototyping tab, top right, I'll demo this for you now. To create your kind of first connection, you can see that Figma starts to hint with a little plus and a blue outline. So the plus is always going to be on the right side of any object or frame. If you wanted to lace an entire frame, blue plus on the right-hand side. And once you hover over that plus, you can drag out an arrow. So long little noodle arrow. And it's going to kind of lock as soon as you get close to another frame. So it's always going to ask you to go to a frame. So when I click this button, it will go to this frame and I release, just drag and release. And that's my first prototype. My little interaction, tap this button, move to this frame. Figma is very smart. It just gives you the defaults. You can see a panel just opened up here. It added my first event, this interaction here. And it opened up a panel with defaults just to get me started. So on tap, meaning the user taps or presses their phone, navigate to, and then the name of the other frame. So very easy, very fundamental. We'll focus on what the other things are in these dropdowns for the rest of the X hour, including some fun animations. So that's the basics of prototyping. You have on tap, so this is what's called the trigger. The trigger is what is the interaction that the user will do in order to move your prototype forward to the next thing. And you might find that hovering is nice. Not on mobile, right? Only on desktop can you hover. Tap works desktop or mobile. Drag, right? Mouse enter, mouse leave. Some of these are used more than others. I would just say if you don't know what they are, we'll go through them, but if we, we won't cover all of them. So if you don't know, either read up on it from Figma, really nice tools. And if you want to like keep getting into deep prototyping, or just try it and see what happens. So action would be either navigate to, which is very basic, it just moves immediately, or some overlay things we'll look at, or scrolling things. So let's try that. Let's do a quick little sprint just to try dragging the prototyping arrows. So for those who are here today, I'm trying something new. We're going to try to prototype all together in the same space. I think it should work. If not, and And for everyone else, there's like an individual prototyping file. So the class sprint file where you would always find it, but the demo file, and you might whoever's here today also, if you want to just try this on your own later, if you find this in the libraries called practice prototyping, and I can send the link out in the Slack after as well, but it's in libraries, practice prototyping, and this will be view only. So important to just duplicate this to your drafts, and then you have your own copy and you can practice prototyping in your own Figma file. Just because it's hard to do this all together. We'll see how it goes today in the sprint file. So I've copied the same prototype screens for everyone, all the same grayscales. So this is something that you know, it's very abstract, but maybe let's say this is what you have on Thursday. And now you're ready to prototype everything together for the homework, for user testing. The basics would be what we just covered. So that's the first thing on the home page. The challenge is to link these bottom two buttons, the vertical scroll link button and then the horizontal scroll primary action button. Link them to the corresponding pages within your prototype. And they all have the right title, right? So this one, the horizontal scroll, and I'll demo this for you. Horizontal scroll, I hover and or click, just to be even more precise. And I get that plus sign. And I'm going to click and drag and release when I get to the horizontal scroll page. So this could say like, buy now, and then it would go to, a list of companies that sells this product, whatever. And you can see the second you release, it just gives you the basic interaction details dropdown. Don't worry about changing anything yet. So just link to horizontal scroll next, click on that button, and then drag it out. And Figma will kind of help you scroll if you need more space. Drag and release on the horizontal scroll. Questions? Yeah, London.
I'm having some trouble like getting the arrow just to the vertical scroll. It's like jumping all the way to the like overflow section.
To the overlay
page.
Same
thing.
Yeah.
Everyone else, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Interesting.
Mine isn't showing the plus. Maybe I missed something, but I see the plus.
Did anyone do it successfully? I just want to make sure that it's not just the prototyping page.
I think I did it successfully.
That's what you think you did?
I duplicated the page and I'm in my own Figma file and it worked successfully.
Yeah, I'm in my own page as well.
Okay, yeah. So it could be that we can't do it all together in the same place. That's totally fine. That was just a trial to see if we could all prototype in the same sprint file. So fine, let's go to the libraries, the practice prototyping, and just duplicate this file for yourself. The drop down at the top, it won't give this to me because I have edit access. It should say duplicate to drafts, I think. And it should allow you to keep your own copy. Something that drop down at the top next to the file name. Yeah, awesome. Okay, we're getting there. Yeah, that's great to know. I mean, I know when you're working in a small team, you can prototype together. Right, Sarah? If you want to just have multiple people, yeah, in the same file prototyping, you can. But bless you. Yeah, so duplicate to drafts at the top, click the drop down arrow, save this to your own personal space, and then you'll be able to prototype and follow along. So what's cool about this file, over on the left-hand side, there's 2 pages. If you don't see it, there's a little drop down. I'm toggling it right now, on, off, on, off. There's a drop down that will allow you to practice, which will have no prototyping links, and then answers, which will have all of them. So you can always click on any of the prototyping arrows and see what the answer is. And this is a little bit more formulaic than most other parts of design. So if that's how your brain works, you might enjoy this a lot. It's like getting a correct answer or mostly correct. So there's still several ways to answer it, but you'll know it if it works. Awesome. So did everyone get a chance to try the basics? Moving the vertical scroll to the vertical scroll page and moving the horizontal button. Yes, London did.
I'm not seeing the little like circle open up when I click on the box. I just see like the corners.
Oh, go into prototype tab on the top right.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
I see that. Sorry.
And then you'll be, once you're in prototype, you'll be able to see the little plus sign and
Yeah.
get all the extra options.
Okay.
Great question.
Yeah.
Yeah. Other questions? Other people got it? Tried the first connection. Okay. Nice. Perfect. And if you just joined, I heard a ding from Zoom. You just joined, we just duplicated the file in the libraries called practice prototyping, just duplicated it for yourself to practice because the sprint file has too many people for prototyping. So duplicate the practice prototyping file. And we just did sprint 1. Okay, we good to keep going? Yeah, awesome. Okay, so the second thing I want to cover is now getting a little bit more specific with prototyping, which is overlays. So an overlay, you've seen this in real world, is something that appears above your current frame, your current designs. So that could be anything from an alert to a modal, discount, X at the top, or like a slide over menu in mobile, keyboards, other things, tooltips. So what's nice about Figma overlays is that you don't need to design a new screen with your overlay on top. What you can do is you can have just your little overlay. Let's say this is a notification box. You can have it over on the side and still prototype it so that it appears on top. It's kind of like magic. So I'll show you real quick how that would work. So here's, let's say it's an Apple Watch for space sake and kind of fun. So Apple Watch with a little button here. And then I have 2 different overlays set up next to each other. They both need to be frames. That's the #1 rule. So the overlay must be its own frame, meaning that, in the panel, you see the hash, right? It's been converted to frame. And now it has special prototyping properties because it's a frame. And now all you would do, like a normal prototype situation, you would choose the object, like here's my button. I want this button to open this overlay here. So I drag my node and I release on this frame. What's interesting though is the frame is not the size of the watch. The frame is smaller because it's an overlay. And so what we would do here in the dropdown is you'd say whatever you would like, any of the triggers. So we'll keep it simple. On top is fine. But what's different is the navigate to is instead open overlay in the dropdown, open overlay. And now it gives you these cool properties, which can customize what it looks like. So you can see a center one for a notification, top left, maybe for a mobile panel, a menu that slides out, other things. And more specifications, like if the user taps anywhere outside of the thing, it would close. That's pretty nice practice, I would say. Sometimes you don't want that, but you don't always want just an X arrow. You want multiple ways to get out of an overlay. So close when clicking outside, and you could even add a little background tint. So let's make, I don't know, like a fun, I'm seeing Chloe's color, shirt color. like a nice turquoisey, like robin's egg, right? It's a beautiful color. So a little background color to that prototype, and we'll ignore animation for now. So what that will do is that will open this page, this overlay on top with a little background color. So let's try it. I'll show you, I'll continue to show you in the class page so that I can demo it in real time. So let's try linking the overlay. From the home page, there's a circle that says overlay, and that's going to be our trigger. Let's imagine that's something the user taps, and we want it to go to the overlay page. So I click on the circle and I drag the plus sign over to the overlay. I'll just try that. I'll give you a second to try that in your own Sprint files. Make sure though that you don't just leave it at that, because it's not necessarily a navigate to. You don't want the entire page to move. You want it to open on top. Open overlay. And then the remaining options are up to your creative choice. Questions on overlay. Give it a try.
Can you do it one more time? I'm sorry.
Yeah, that's what I'm here for. So clicking on the trigger, so I clicked on the circle, the overlay circle, hover at the plus sign, and then drag that node and release on the overlay frame. And that is going to navigate to, I want to change that drop down to open overlay. And now it gives me a little sign that it's an overlay, this nice little blue. Yeah, I don't think I can zoom in because it's an interface thing, but it's a blue 2 squares sign. And let's see, I can, so when you want to try to play your prototype, because we're starting to get some, 1 or 2 interactions, there's a huge present play button on the top right of your file. So within your practice prototyping file, you'll want to try every once in a while to click present, and it will open in a new tab. That's how prototyping works. So you have a new tab, and because I chose, my Apple Watch and the silver color, it will give me the silver Apple Watch. And now I can try hitting that button and it'll give me the next screen, which is like as much as I've prototyped so far in this, it's not really my prototyping file, but let's say I want to try just to see this overlay demo. I would maybe change the starting frame to, what the hell did I name it? 4. Page 4. Obviously, it'd be nice to have like more specific names so that you're not hunting for them in the dropdown. But then when I go back to my prototyping page, I can either kind of hit restart or go through the different arrows, and now I can see my overlay with a pretty robin's egg blue, and I can click outside to make sure that that works. How are we doing? Some nods. Yeah, I like nods. Thumbs up. That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah. Okay. So one side note, which we don't necessarily need to try today, it's more of an edge case. But there's a thing called swap with, and that allows you to link multiple overlays together. So kind of think like, let's say you're in a tutorial, an overlay comes up and then you need to swipe through it a few times. So that would be a nice situation for swap with. What that would do is I would just link this overlay page to the other one. Fancy. And instead of navigate to, I say swap overlay, right? Swap with, and we're done. Now it's going to go from this overlay page to this one. A little bit more advanced, so we don't need to try it, but just, getting an idea of what those other things are in the drop-down panel, and what they would be used for. Okay, let's keep going. This one's a little bit, yeah, more straightforward, but hard to find. So fixed items are things that would be, you know, like a sticky, you also call it, is an object that doesn't scroll with the rest of the page. So if you have a header that you want to have fixed there and the rest of the page moves, there's a nice way in Figma to make sure that that is set up properly. All you need to do is find this checkbox, fixed position when scrolling. It's in the design tab. I find that a little bit odd because, yeah, you're in prototyping tab for the rest of forever. Let me show you here, but suddenly it's in the design tab. So in our next sprint, we will want in this vertical scroll page to fix this header. And I'll show you real quick how to find that. So you click on the header first, go to design on the top right, and here's the checkbox, the elusive checkbox, fix position when scrolling. And that's going to affect your prototype. So that's the only kind of funny thing I think with Figma's UX. I would look in the prototype tab for this, but it's in design because it's related to a design element. You need to, you know, click on this piece and then fix position. And what you can see over on your layers panel, it gives it a fancy header situation in your layers. So now my nav bar, I'm hovering over it, my nav bar has a fixed in all caps title, and then the rest of the page says scrolls. That's how you know that they heard you for scrolling. So try that now. In your sprint files, go ahead to the vertical scroll page if you haven't already. Click first on the entire header, and then find in the design tab, fixed position when scrolling, check that off. How are we doing with that? Okay, great. Keep going. There's 2 more things that you want to link up on this page to make sure that your prototype is fully functioning, which would be linking this button to the detail page. So don't forget, switch back over to prototype mode, the tab on the top right. Detail page, I'm going to click on that button and drag that plus to the right to find my detail page A and release. So that button, and then the back button. Here we have back, but little trick here because I click on the back, what I think I'm clicking on the back button, but it's grouped, right? The entire header is grouped so that it can be fixed. So I got to double click again and again until I see that, here's my back button. The, you know, borders around this area. This is what my tap area should be. Now I can say this is going to go back a page, which I'll go back to home and release. So just linking up those extra things. It's kind of, you know, reiterating the first thing that we just did today, the home page, reiterating how to link those basic properties, detail page, and back button, double clicking to get to that grouping within back so that this is your tap area. Yeah, should we keep going? Liam's ready. Others, how are we doing? Questions? Good. Okay. Let's move forward. All right. So a little bit on frames. So I'm going to talk for a little bit more because before we sprint, because this one is kind of it's a Figma thing that doesn't involve prototyping, but if you know it, you'll be able to do the next thing. So this is kind of an advanced frames move. So we know how to make an object. We know how to make a frame, right? Clicking F and drawing it, or clicking F and finding the size of the frame from the menu. What we didn't do yet is converting an object that we already have into a frame. So this is helpful in prototyping because you might have something that is an overlay and now you're like, oh, I need to make this a frame in order to have the overlay properties. You would right click on any object. So this is a normal square and I click frame selection. It's going to now give my square superhero prototyping properties. Really, really nice to be able to just do that on any object that you already have. But what you'll notice now is that if you wanted to change the size of that square, what is happening here? Why do I have like this weird blue box and why isn't my square coming with me? It's a little strange, right? Because we're used to just changing a square and the whole color comes with you. Now that it's a frame, it has two bounding boxes. This is the frame's bounding box, and then here's the object inside. What? So making sure you're aware of what actually you're changing the size of is going to help you a lot. And you can always peek in your layers panel to see, oh, okay, so there's a rectangle inside of a frame. So now I would actually need to change both of these. If you wanted to change both at once, you would need to say, okay, what is my frame size going to be? What is the fill going to be? And actually just kind of move those each in sequence. Unless there's a fancier trick there, I haven't found it yet. But what that means is that you can put frames inside of frames. You can take this object, convert it to frame like I just showed, which would be frame selection, right click. And this one as well, it's bigger square, frame selection with a right click. Now I have two frames here. Now I'm going to put frame 2 inside frame 3. Now I have nested frames, which is a little trippy, but really great for the next prototyping thing. This is when you can say, I'm going to change the frame size and not the object size. And now you can see that the blue outline is actually the blue outline of your frame. And then there's an object within that that's a bigger. And then there's a frame inside that. So just kind of getting an understanding of how frames and images work inside each other and how they might actually relate to each other. And I'll show you why in the next step. So here we have overflow. The idea with overflow is that you'll have the ability to scroll outside of your starting frame. Really nice for carousels, which we'll learn how to do, or galleries, things that you can kind of pan outside, or map, right? So if you have a map, there's actually a lot of material outside of your frame because the user can pan, right? They can swipe and see other content. So in Figma, that content would live outside of your frame, and the user can use this overflow technique to kind of scroll and pan within this small frame. And I linked, just so you know, I linked this. This is like a URL here. So you can always go to the Figma article. They have a lot more to say on overflow than we can fit in 10 minutes. So I encourage you to try that out and look at some of their demos. They have nice GIFs and more tutorials there. So we will try a scrolling carousel. And I'll demo it first and then we'll try it in the prototype. So here's my little Apple Watch, and I want to be able to scroll through these 4 pieces of content, like left to right, right? Little carousel, nothing fancy. What some people might think is, oh, can I just like make my whole prototype like this long and scroll? Not really, because what you can see here, I have two versions of a scroll. So here's my vertical scroll. It's actually a longer page. That's okay. It's not an iPhone 8 anymore. It's actually just longer. Versus this one, which is all tucked into a perfectly sized iPhone 8, and then the content extends beyond. This is an overflow, and this one is just a normal long page. It's kind of a, yeah, I'll show you here in the prototyping mode so you can see it even more clearly. It's kind of an interesting thing because here I'm just scrolling normally, but look, the background is moving with me, right? I fixed the header, but the background is moving. That's just because it's a really long page. So Figma goes, oh, this long page won't fit in an iPhone 8. We're gonna scroll for you, right? Here it is, really long page. And so the whole thing scrolls. And that's great, really nice. You might choose to have that. Or you might choose, and I'll show you this horizontal scroll, you might choose for the background not to move. Right? So now the only thing that's scrolling is actually these gray squares. They start to develop like this extra layer of personality that allows you to keep everything else in place, including the dots. I mean, it would be great if the dots like lit up, right, as we were scrolling. Maybe someday, or if you're really fancy in Figma, share your file with me because I think it's possible, but maybe it's too much work for what it's worth. But we can actually scroll and it seems somewhat lifelike versus this vertical one where the entire background image is kind of coming with us. This is just normal kind of website, not parallax if you're a developer and you understand what parallax means. So here's why, here's how rather to try this overflow scroll where the objects are kind of like levitating on top. A little bit tricky, and that's kind of why I put it towards the end. So I make sure we have enough time to go through it. So nested frames are going to be helpful here. So here is my Apple Watch frame. Then I have 4 rectangles in no particular order. What I want is these 4 rectangles to be nested inside this Apple Watch, but they need to extend beyond the watch. Obviously, we're not going to make the watch wider like the other example because we want the watch to stay fixed. So I'm going to follow these instructions here, which is you first create the objects that will be scrolled through. Here's my 4 objects. Now I need to convert them into a single frame. So I'm going to click all 4, holding Shift, and right-click frame selection. So just like I made a frame out of one object, I can make a frame out of a group of objects. So all 4 are selected. I'm going to frame them all. Bam. So here's my frame 4. And if I move the title of frame 4, you can see they're all inside the frame. And I can also open up this layers panel to confirm, yes, 4 rectangles in a frame together. So this might be great, but what now we need to do is make sure that this frame is nested in the watch. So one way to do that would be to kind of finagle it. It doesn't even want to catch. So I would just drag the entire frame in my layers panel. Frame 4 is all of my objects, and I'm going to drag them into Apple Watch. So now they're nested inside the Apple Watch. Great. So now Figma knows that we have a watch with a frame of 4 objects inside of it, but they need to extend outside of their own bounds. So that's where this next step comes in. It's a little bit tricky. You need to resize this group of objects, resize their frame. So I'm going to take the frame, this blue thing, and make it actually smaller so that it's inside and actually only around the first object. So I just changed the frame, right? Because we learned that the frame itself can change size. So I'm going to change that frame size to be smaller. It's still frame 4 and it still has all the rectangles in it. but the size of the frame now is concise inside of the Apple Watch. There's the trick. So to reiterate, those objects need to extend beyond their own frame. So here's their frame, but they are also like visually outside of it in your prototype, even though Figma sees them as nested. And the objects don't need to move now. We're ready to just prototype this. You would choose the frame that they all are, encapsulated with, frame 4. And they're hinting over in the prototype tab that there's an overflow behavior available. We didn't have this before, this drop down. Now it's available for overflow, and I'm going to say, yes, please, horizontal scroll left to right. I'm going to choose that in the drop down. And you don't need to have any other interaction. No, like on tap, go to, no, because it's already just going to be a horizontal scroll situation. Figma knows what to do from there. There's no animation necessary. There's no tap or anything. Horizontal scroll. If you had a map, you might want to choose horizontal and vertical, because now you can just imagine the user can scroll in any direction, X, Y, up, down, right, and horizontal and vertical. Tricky, but really, really great to know how to do the horizontal vertical scrolling. So this is called overflow. Link at the top to see more in Figma, more demos, see how powerful it is if you have other ideas for how this could be used. The last thing I might show you here is just that, this can get in the way, these other art things. Sure, you want them visible when you're designing so you can put things there. But when they're in the way, it's nice to clip content, and that's in your design tab. All that does is it just hides them from your canvas so that they aren't going to be messed up when you're dragging things around. Yeah, question, Naomi?
Yeah, how does it know that those like 3 other frames are even there if there's no frame surrounding it?
Yeah, weird, right? Because it's nested in the layers panel. So it still kind of uses the layers panel as what, that's still the idea of like what floor you're on. It's still the architecture, because they're inside frame 4. But now that Figma knows that that frame is small, there must be some way to get to these other property tiles, which would be a scrolling event in the prototyping tab. So it's a little bit strange because now you might forget that they're there. So that's when the clip content is really helpful. If things somehow get hidden from you and you don't know, where are these rectangles? They might be clipped in the design tab. Yeah, Chloe.
This is sort of, I'm just curious.
Yeah.
I accidentally made a frame out of one of the individual rectangles, and it's not affecting sort of the scroll, it's working, but is there a way to like make it not a frame again? Because it's just kind of messy.
Yeah. So on the frame, you can go right click and it's actually ungroup.
Oh, okay.
It kind of frames act like groups. They just have a special superpower. Alternatively, you could just kind of dissolve it from within. So you could take those rectangles and drag them out and then delete the frame. It's kind of a longer way around it, but sometimes helpful also to try that way if something looks funky. Yeah, should we try it? Okay, let's try it. I just did a really in-depth demo, but I'm going to do it here. Not on this one, I'll do it on the class page. Yeah, I'll do it here so that if you want to see it again, you have this on the recording. So I'm in the horizontal flow, the overflow horizontal scroll page, and I want to make these 4 rectangles scrollable. So the background doesn't move and the plus and the dots don't move with me. So each one of these rectangles needs to first be selected, all 4 of them, right click, frame selection. So now they have their frame, but that frame must be inside the horizontal scroll frame. So I'm going to find, either find the frame and try to nest it, or let's see, I would put frame 1 on top and then maybe horizontal scroll on top and 1 back, just so they're close to each other. Normally we wouldn't have such a long layers panel. So frame 1 needs to be inside horizontal scroll. I'm going to drag that on my layers panel so that it's contained inside. And now I see horizontal scroll with frame 1, these objects can nest it inside. Last step, change the frame size. So I'm going to wait until I get that double arrow on the right-hand side and then change the frame so it's smaller. And then in overflow, choose horizontal scroll. Chloe, you still have a question?
Sorry, I forgot to put my hand down.
No, no worries. Other questions? Well.
Hi, yeah, so can you just go over one more time where we would like demonstrate the functionality of this like in real time?
Yeah, great. So now you want to try it, right? And make sure that this worked, is the horizontal thing and everything. I will show you within the practice prototyping page. On the top right, there's a play button called present. And so clicking that, make sure that, you have your device set up. You want your, it's iPhone 8, choose a color, whatever, so that you see it in context, then hit play. It's going to open up in a new tab where you can see everything you just did. And if you click outside, it's going to give you blue hints. You can turn those off. There's a bunch of prototyping options on the top right. And then you can try and see, okay, I can click outside of the overlay, that works. I can horizontal scroll, yay, that's the one I just did, that works, right? Try to link everything, because what you'll find with your user testing is people will get stuck if you don't try it here. And I'll repeat that, people will get stuck in your prototype and they'll be frustrated. Because they'll be on a page like this, you'll be so proud of the horizontal scrolling and then forget the X button. And now they're stuck, they can't get out, they can't finish their test. So you need to be like your own guinea pig and try everything. Try every little button, try to break it, right? Having that mindset of thinking about where people might click and what might happen. Yeah. Okay, how are we feeling with this last overflow bit? It's a lot, but hopefully the steps are clear. Okay, in the last 5 minutes, we will look at animations. I think, they deserve 8 or 10 X hours because they're so fun. And there's so much to do here, but I'll have to just introduce it a little bit so that you get an idea of what's possible. And Figma does some really magical things. So one thing is called Smart Animate. I also linked this for more details. You should see some of those beautiful GIFs that you can do. Essentially, it finds layers that seem similar and then gives you a transition between them. So something like an object that changes in opacity, instead of just being like Lori was showing with Gestalt, like instead of just being on or off, it will actually ramp up. It will increase in color before your eyes. And you don't need to interact, draw as Lori used to do in the old school, like 10% opacity, 15% opacity, 20%, and then animate those. Figma will do it between 2 pages, 0 and 100, and it'll go. Change opacity in front of your eyes. It will slowly brighten or change shape or fill the color with one checkbox. It's wild what they can do. So checkbox for Smart Animate, I'll show you that in a second. And then this idea of easing, which is, right, and if you study physics, it's like the ramp up and slow down time. So ease in, which would be a little bit of a slow start and then accelerate. or ease out, which would be, you know, a quick and then slow. And that is nice when you have a page that comes in from the left. You don't want it to kind of come in quickly and then slow down. You want it to slowly come in, get your attention, and then quickly lock into place. So there's kind of these ideas and these principles behind how we perceive motion and how we understand movement of things. And it's actually perfect timing. Anka is teaching a workshop tomorrow night on Smart Animate with the DALL-E Lab at 7 p.m. I'll link it in the Slack. But this is perfect. You should all go. You'd have plenty. You have all you need to understand that workshop on Smart Animate, because I cannot do it in 5 minutes, but I will try to at least show you where to find that in your sprint file. So these last 2 pages are designed such that they can beautifully transition from one thing to the next. So linking your next button, you know, from next to page B, and then from this next to page A, right? So that you can kind of cycle between them. And all you do is in this animation panel now at the bottom is there's a checkbox, Smart Animate Matching Layers. And that checkbox is on most things, push, I think, yeah, slide and move. So any of these bottom ones will have Smart Animate as a checkbox. And here's your easing. Ease in, ease out, ease in and out, ease in back. It's like all these different kind of like, if you were to think of a ball dribbling, and Lori could explain this better, and your time here. So you can say, how quickly do you want this animation to happen? This is in milliseconds. Really quick, so you don't even see it, or should it take a little bit more time? I'll show you quickly kind of like what that even means. So here from the detail page button, you have a Smart Animate, and now you can click next. And some of these, you know, you can continue to kind of refine it. But this changes shape to longer. These change shape to wider, and this one's broken. This one should normally just kind of, yeah, probably because I just demoed it. Morph from a circle to a square. Kind of ruined that, but that's okay. You get the idea of Smart Animate more or less, that it's available to you from this checkbox. Try it in your sprint file, play with the different options that it affords you, and go to Anka's workshop. It's going to be so fun. You'll have a full hour for this. So we're at time. I'll stick around if you have any questions. Thanks for coming. Good to see you all. Yeah, Chloe.
Yeah, so I guess this might not be relevant to this particular Excel. I'm curious, like, how would you go about changing that circle into like a square in an animation? It like right now it's showing it swiping, whereas the other ones show it actually like changing in size. So I'm curious if that's something specific to like the whole animation, we haven't learned that yet. That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I was just curious why, in particular, for this shape, it's showing it swiping into like the square instead of changing in shape like the other ones.
Yeah. So let me see if I can get that going again, because one thing that Figma needs is similar layer names, and then the other thing it needs is, yeah, it's a little bit better. So that's swiping through them. But the other thing it needs is the push, right? So you could say push, or you could say Smart Animate, and then maybe change your easing here. So here, let me change this here. So the second that this object is named similarly, so you could say ellipse, instead of ellipse and rectangle, you would say like center and center, right? And then they start to understand that it's like the same property, and then it can change between those two because it's the same thing, and it would then become like, let's say you called it bear, then it would be like, oh, the bear should have like this dexterity to it. And if it was just something growing in size, obviously it's also just called rectangle and then rectangle. So that's going to grow in length. Yeah. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, that did.
Yeah. It's really fun, right?
Yeah, I think I'm gonna experiment a little bit with that.
Yeah, please do. Absolutely. And
Yeah.
that's what this file is for, just being able to try different things.
Thank you.
Great.
Have a nice day.
Yeah, no problem. Take care.